makers, it is Jo here from Minerva, and today we are going to add to our Fabric Masterclass series, and this week we're going to be taking a look at coating. Coating is a really broad term for lots of different fabric types, and we'll take a look at some of those today. This series is linked to our fabric guide, where you will find 70 of our most popular base cloths described in a book with lots of knowledge and information about the fabric type. Inside the folder, you'll get a chapter on how fabrics are made, lots of detailed information, along with the different fibre types that fabrics are made from, because if you know a little bit about fibre types, then you'll know a little bit about how the fabric will behave. In the final chapter of the book, you will be able to look up in alphabetical order particular fabric types, and you can find out specific information about one. So on the coating page, you'll see lots of information about what you can make with it, how you sew with it, and the characteristics of it. Of course, in the coating category, the fabrics are quite broad, so that's what we're going to take a look at today. On the coating page, it will give you some information about fibre content, and as we've just said, that's quite varied, so you will need to check that in the fabric description. There's some information on the characteristics of coating in either its weave or its texture. Extra details here, especially about washing, and there's also quite a big section here on sewing tips, and that's what I'm going to look at today. You'll get your fabric swatch, and in this case it's a piece of vegan wool coating, and that's the pea coat that you can see behind me, so you can have a feel of it and see, would that be thick enough for the coat that I want to make or the bag that I'm making, and you can compare that to other fabrics, especially in coating, because you might want to go and look at a different type of coating. You can check out flannel, and you'll find that that one is much lighter. You can get the weight of it so you can compare it to other fabrics. If you want something thicker, you can get in-depth details about particular types of coating, where you can compare a thicker fabric. Today we're going to look at flannel coating. Coating is a broad term to mean any fabric that has a medium to thick weight that can be used for making coats and outerwear. Of course, it doesn't have to be those. You could be making bags with them. Today I'm going to make a pair of trousers, and the fabric that I'm looking at is a flannel. So under the broad term coating, you'll find subcategories like flannel, melton, cashmere coating, bouclés, boiled wool. All of those fabrics are classed as coating, so if you put that into Minerva's search engine, you'll get quite a range of fabric types, so do check the description and take a look at the fibre content. This is a flannel coating. It's got a beautiful texture. It's just the kind of coating that is suitable for other projects too, like waistcoats, lined skirts, lined smart trousers. It would make a beautiful suit, a men's suit, boy's suit, ladies' suit. It's got a real fluidity to it. It feels like a natural fibre. If you want something thicker and more structured for a coat, then you could try a Melton fabric, and this tends to have a polyester content, so it's got a bit more of a smoother finish, not quite as sort of natural feeling as this one, but it still does look like the outside of a wool coat, a little bit more mottled in its textures and colour palette that make up that surface colour. This one you can't put the iron on so hot, so you'll need to definitely test any coating that has a polyester content. You can also get coating that has a pattern in it or a particular weave in it. You can get a tweed, which is generally wool with a more pronounced tartan pattern in it. You can also find tweeds that are plain in colour and sometimes a sort of mock tweed with a little bit of polyester in, and that will reduce the price. So all of these fabrics fall under the coating category, even though they've all got different names. But I think it would be a bit obvious to make a coat. I want to show you that coating fabric can be used for other things as well. So today I'm going to be making the Flint trousers from Megan Nielsen. They're a wide leg trouser with pleats at the front and pockets, and I'm also going to line them, so you might see bits of my lining in the shots. But really I want to take a look at how to sew different types of coating fabric. This coat here is made with Minerva's core range vegan wool coating, and that is much thicker. That's the sample that you saw in the fabric guide. This created layers really quickly. I'll show you a little sample of sewing this, but this makes more of a winter overcoat, whereas this fabric would make a lighter coat. It's a good idea if you're thinking of a coat project, because it's going to be a bit of a slow sew, then it's a good idea to get a sample of the fabric so you can feel the weight of it. Minerva run a sample service, so you can buy a little strip of the fabric to see what it feels like. You can also wash that strip, so you can decide if it's going to behave and wash and act in the way that you expect it to. I'll list the coating fabrics below in the little link at the bottom, so you can go and check some of them out, and I'll also put this pattern there too. Before you decide to pre-wash your whole piece of fabric, it's a good idea to wash a sample. It really does depend what you're going to do with your garment when it's finished. Are you going to spot clean it? Are you going to have it dry cleaned? Are you going to wear it for occasional wear? Do you want to wash it all of the time? And I'm going to pre-wash it on 20 degrees on a really low spin cycle, because I don't want to spoil the texture. But I am getting a little bit of blue dye coming off my fingers, and because I'm making trousers today, I'd like to make sure that I don't get blue legs, so I'm going to give my fabric a pre-wash. Coat making used to be a project reserved really for experienced sewers, but nowadays I think there's some really great patterns out there. Loads of coats, overcoats, cocoon coats, coats that are really quite simple to make for intermediate and confident beginners. That's where you might be wanting to make sure that you've got a coating fabric that's easy to work with if you're at the easy end of picking a pattern. But if you're picking a pattern with more complex details and features, you might also really need to consider which fabric you pick so that it becomes successful. Let's take a look at a Minerva Maker Gallery just to see what everyone has been up to. It's a really great way to inspire yourself and to find out about different fabric types and how they hang. Let's start with a flannel. So this is the lighter end of the fabrics. It's suitable for skirts, suits and dresses. You can also get a cashmere coating, so this one has utilised a raw edge and made really simple, but this suit is really complex and beautiful. You can get a Melton coating, so this is a little bit thicker, suitable for trousers, suits, waistcoats and coats. Coat making doesn't have to be tricky. You can hand sew on with blanket stitch, or you can use a lighter flannel and make an overshirt style. This one is the Ilford jacket. The vegan wool coating comes in many colours, suitable for coat making, cosplay, where you need a little bit of extra firmness and thickness. You can use vegan wool coating for capes or vintage sewing for both adults and children. Bouclés is a softer coating, so this is suitable for coatigans, coats without too many details, rolled over or curled collars. You might be mixing your coating fabrics with either a shearling for thicker layers or for another fabric for style. We have lots of patterned wool coating fabrics that come in and out of stock, suitable for coats, pinafores and dresses. Or you could check out some tweed. So the first one is a looser weave tweed and the second one is a smooth tweed. Okay, let's crack on with the sewing tips. So the first thing we're going to think about is cutting, marking and preparing our wool fabric. I've cut my fabric with dressmaking scissors. You can use a rotary cutter, pinking shears. I've cut quite accurately. It's easy to cut accurately because it's stable. You could cut it out on the floor, you could cut it out on a table. And I've marked my darts with a tailor's tack, just because I sort of feel with these trousers I'm tailoring these trousers. And I've also marked my fabric with a chalk with wrong side, with a W for wrong side, because I don't want to make two left trouser legs or two right trouser legs. So I've marked my fabric so that I know which is the right side and the wrong side, because with this fabric it's exactly the same on both sides. The right side and the wrong side are indistinguishable. If you don't want to mark your fabric, you can also add a safety pin. And if you have a few safety pins, you can put them in your fabric. And I always like to think if I can see the safety pin, then it's on the wrong side. And it just gives me a little clue. You can put a handful of safety pins in each piece so that you know that when you can see the safety pin, that's the wrong side. It means your darts are on the right side, your tucks are on the right side. I've used a chalk to mark the tucks. I used a tailor's tack to mark the dart, but you can use any of these techniques. You just want to make sure that if you're making something tailored like a coat or trousers or a waistcoat, that you have put all of the notch markings on, otherwise your item won't go together really smoothly. I'm pinning my fabric today because it's nice and light, but if you're starting to get thicker and thicker layers in particular areas of your coat making, then you can definitely use clips, because the fabric is strong enough to hold the weight of the clips while you're working. It's particularly useful on pocket flaps and where you get two seam intersections. I have a universal needle in my machine. I always start my test sew on a straight stitch with my stitch tension on 4. It's really easy to sew coating, it's stable, it doesn't move around, and you can pin and sew as you go. Coating will take a back tack, and when you peel your fabric open you don't want to see any of the threads. I've got a blue thread in there, so it's obviously a little bit tricky to see, but it's not wrinkling the seam is staying flat. If it's starting to do this, then you need to loosen off the tension, and if you're getting a slight banana shaping, then you're stretching and pulling it too much under the foot. Let the fabric be taken through the machine simply with the feed dogs underneath. The thicker your coating, the longer you need to make your stitch length. So on the flannel I was able to sew with a 2.5 stitch length, but with this vegan wool coating, when I sewed this seam, I made my stitch length 3, so that when that's pressed open, there's enough stitch tension in that line to peel both ways with a thicker fabric. It means you can get a really good finish and you don't have a furrow in the middle of your seam where it's too tight. Now we can take a look at finishing. Your finishing will depend on how you're making up your coat or jacket or item that you're making. I've used pinking shears, and actually if I was lining a coat I would just use pinking shears. I've got a lovely big seam allowance. The pinking shears is stopping it fraying. It doesn't fray very much anyway, but if you feel like you want to finish things off so they last a little bit longer, you can try an overcast stitch. Which is a type of zigzag stitch that stops any fraying going past that straight stitch line. The little zigzags help to keep the woven parts of the weave in order. You can use an overlocker. Just put your diff feed on 1 so that it doesn't wrinkle up the fabric, and always do a little test piece. You can also zigzag. A zigzag is a little bit finer and it doesn't create so much bulk. And you will also be considering, how much do I need to finish this? Because if your jacket is lined, then all of this will be on the inside. So I wouldn't waste so much overlocker thread doing this on the inside of a jacket. I'd probably just zigzag. In the case of the fabric that I'm using today, it doesn't really fray that much anyway, so you'll be needing to do just a little fray test when you get your fabric because all of those things will help you choose the techniques that will help you to sew efficiently and make sure that your garment lasts a long time. Another higher end finish you can try is to Hong Kong your seams or bind your seams. It's really good if you've got a jacket that you're not lining, or a coat that's just like an overcoat or an oversized shirt coat, and you just want to make sure that when you get a little flash of the insides, it's really nicely finished. And you can make this finish the same colour fabric, a pattern fabric, print fabric, or a contrast. Look at that, doesn't it look amazing? Looks like a real Chanel style finish that could be on the inside of your coat. I've just realised I've sewn up the pocket opening, which is the opening for the trousers. So if you're unpicking wool, then you can do it from the wrong side, where you take a few stitches, or you can open the seam and use the ball to seam rip. At the ends, if you've back tacked, you can just take those last few out, stitch at a time. Most coating has a thick fuzzy texture, so it doesn't damage the fabric irreparably, and you can return and resew. Or in my case, leave it open so I can get my trousers on and off. Depending on how thick your coating fabric is, whether you're putting pockets in trousers or pockets and flaps and tabs on coats, you might want to switch out one of your layers for a lining fabric. So in this case, on my trousers, I've made the pocket lining in a cotton, and then my pocket bag in the same fabric. So from the right side, you don't see any of that fabric, pattern fabric, but it's just creating a slimmer seam allowance and set of layers here where I'm going to join the waistband. So that might be something to consider if you're working with coating. If you're sewing thicker coating fabrics, like this is the vegan wool coating, I've got 4 layers there, and you can see it's becoming quite a thick amount of fabric to hold in the seam allowance. You may find that layering out some of the seams might help you for pressing. This is a good way to reduce bulk. It means you can take out one of the seam allowances and then you can still press flat. Still quite thick, so you could work that area with a clapper and steam. Another area you might need to reduce bulk is if you have a fitted coat where you have darts. So depending on how thick your fabric is, then if you try and press these down, they will create those 3 layers of fabric bulk. You can cut your dart open. If you need to finish the edges because your fabric frays, you can just hand overcast that. That's a couture tailoring technique. Or if it's a very felted fabric like this vegan wool coating, you can just split the dart and press it open. That one's been pressed over a ham, and you can see it's creating a really smooth line. When you start to get lots of thick areas, so here I've got 2 layers for the pocket flap and 2 layers for the button tab, and then that is attached to the coat, you really have to spend quite a bit of time pressing, steaming, and making sure that each piece is flat before you add it to the next one. And again, the pocket is lined to reduce bulk with a lighter fabric. Depending on your fabric's fibre content, you might be needing to adjust how you press your garment and how many details it has as well. So if you've got lots of tab pocket details and things, then you'll need to be really pressing as you go. Let's take a look at some of the pressing tips that you can use when you're working with coating fabric. Change your iron to your fabric fibre content, so I'm on wool. Because I'm using wool, I'm going to press this pocket and I'm going to use a press cloth. I'm also going to use that little bit of steam in the fabric and use the clapper. It will really help you to get a crisp finish on pockets and specific areas of your garment. Here I've got my sort of tuck pleat. Now I don't want that to be too creased, I want that to be a little bit softer, so I'm just going to steam that, not press it with the iron, and then lightly press with a clapper. So the clapper will give you a little bit more control and will be a little bit softer. You might need to do a press test on a piece of fabric, because if you use steam on wool or too hot a temperature, you will shrink the fabric. So now I have a soft pleat in the front and a crisp press on the pocket edge. Pressing each seam open, no matter what garment you're making, will give your final product a real professional finish. You can press from the wrong side, and after you've done a test, you can also press from the right side if your fabric will take it. If you're pressing collars or sleeves, then you might want to use this side of your tailor's ham, because you get a little bit of grip on that fabric, and you can use it to go around corners, sleeve heads, or trickier parts of whatever it is you're sewing. Quite often you might be working with collars when you're working with coating fabric, so you might need to use some interfacing. You can try an iron-on interfacing if your fabric will take the heat to melt the glue, or you could try a sewing interfacing where you can use some tailoring techniques to really make your collar curl. So on this coat, these lapels here have had pad stitching put behind them so that they curl over, and there's a piece of interfacing inside, and that's taking the collars so that they don't just stick up in the air. I'm using a waistband interfacing because I'm making trousers, and this waistband interfacing only has a 1 centimetre seam allowance on, and I would like a 1.5 centimetres, so I've just left that little bit uninterfaced. I will let you into a secret. I have narrowed the waistband a little bit because it's quite deep for me, because I'm quite short in the body. So I will still have a waistband with the flint button closure. It'll just be a little bit shallower. You don't have to use waistband interfacing. You can use an interfacing that matches the weight of your fabric. So if you've got something quite felted, like this flannel wool mix, then you'll need something about the same weight. If you've got something lighter or more woven, then you might want to use a medium weight to strengthen particular parts. It really does depend on what you're making and which fabric you're using, but you can use the iron-on one, or you can use the sew-in one if you want the interfacing to not be stuck to the fabric. If you're finding you're getting bubbling on your collar pieces, for example, if you're making a coat, then you might want to use a sew-in interfacing. For collars, you can simply either apply your sewing interfacing by tacking around the edge, or you can use that pad stitch that I mentioned where the interfacing is attached to the outer, but you can't see it because you very carefully pick up the stitches. You can put them really close together and create a curve. So here the fabric is being pulled by the interfacing to create a curved shape. A little bit more of a tailoring technique, but it really does depend on your coat pattern. On my trousers, I have hand sewn up the hems, and that's a really good technique for lots of coats, coatigans and that kind of thing, because you've got a thick fuzzy texture or quite a thick weave. You've got somewhere to pick up the threads, you've got this fuzziness to bury your stitches in so you can't see them from the right side. Those need a press. I've used quite a deep hem. This one is 2 inches, but you don't need it that much particularly. It's just I want the wide leg trouser to have quite a weighted hem. If you don't think that method will work for you, because maybe you're lining something, then you can go and check out our hemming video. There's lots of different techniques in there, so you might be able to choose one that A, you prefer, or B, you think will work better for your fabric and your pattern. You might choose to use all different kinds of buttonhole features in your coating. We've got lots of tutorials on our website. There are bound buttonholes, how to use an automatic buttonhole and a 3-step buttonhole on your machine, how to hand sew your buttonholes if you've got something that's fraying a little bit, or today I'm just going to add my 2 buttonholes in the waistband. I've been trying my trousers on and off as I have been making them, so I've got quite a few bits stuck to the wool blend, so you might want to use a lint roller just to finally get the finish you want before you wear your garment out and about. Okay, these are my trousers, so they're a wool mix. They hang like a really beautiful pair of tailored trousers. They've got the double button there, and that opens out into the pocket. That's the style of the flint trousers. You can wear it with any kind of top, but I've also made a waistcoat. Here you can see the flannel used in a different way. It's got matching buttons to here. It's made a complete ladies suit. This one has a shiny back, and because this is in the lighter end of our coating range, this flannel is just that little bit lighter for women's wear. If you're looking for something thicker, you might want to check out one of the other coating fabrics. Because I knew I was making a suit, that is the reason I pre-wash my fabric, because I can either spot clean these 2 items, or I know that I can put them back on a 20-degree and give them a light wash. If you have been inspired to have a go at using a coating fabric, then Vicky will be with you shortly, where she will show you a pattern inspiration session where she will look at different types of coating and which patterns to pair them with, because getting the right coating fabric for the right pattern will really make or break your garment. You'll find that really useful because you'll be able to see somebody match a pattern with the correct fabric. If you would like to explore more fabric types, then take a look at the Minerva fabric guide. There's a couple of videos that support this, so you can have a more in-depth look and a chat about it. There's one with Vicky and there's one with me, and we both take you through what's inside the guide. It gives you lots of information about how fibres are made, knit fibres, stretch fibres, gives you information about stretch on fabric. Really great information here about its weight versus its thickness, and that will definitely help you to understand the hand of the fabric when you see it online. How to wash fabric, and some considerations for if you're buying fabric online. The next section of the book is an index of all different fibre types. So if you understand what fibre your fabric is made out of, then you'll understand more about the characteristics of it and whether it will suit a particular project or not. The last section is the section where you'll have 70 little swatches to put into your book, like a little sticker book. The QR code is really handy because if you scan the QR code, then boiled wool will be filtered to your page. So if you think, oh, I really fancy making something with this, and I think I can do all of these things, or it's something I want to explore, it will filter it down so that there's only boiled wool in your search. So that is the Minerva fabric guide. Of course, it may seem strange that I have made trousers with a fabric called coating, but I've given you lots of maker inspiration for coats, and I just wanted to show you something a little bit different because
This fabric isn't just for coating, just because it's called that. You can use fabrics for all different things. Coating fabrics on the thicker side are really good for bag making, for homeware like cushions or puffs, or covering chairs and seats, all of those kinds of things. So sometimes you can really switch up the feel of something by choosing different types of coating. We would love to see anything that you have been making. So if you've been making something with coating, we'd like to see your pattern pairing. If you've just made something really successful, we'd love to see that too. So do make a free account over at Minerva, share your makes there, give a little description of what you've been up to, take a photograph so we can see it, and you'll get a lot of love and feedback and support from our sewing community. Thank you very much for watching. Do call back for more in our fabric.